Let's transition to a little Cincinnati Reds talk here on the show. So Nick Krall, Brad Meador, president of baseball operations, Krall, and Meador, the GM, met with the media, kind of had their press conference of kind of putting a bow on the 2025 season and turning the page to 2026. And, I sat up here and I celebrated the fact that the Cincinnati Reds were able to make the postseason. Obviously, they got spanked by the Dodgers, but look, the Phillies are getting spanked by the Dodgers right now, too. The Dodgers are just really, really good, in case you guys did not know that. But, a lot of other people, that do this maybe were saying, you can't just be saying it's a success that the Reds made the playoffs. I pushed back on that. I was like, look where this team has been over the course of the past few years. First year with Francona, young core. They made the postseason against all odds. They deserve a lot of credit for that, and they deserve to celebrate that. And that's certainly what they did on the evening of Game 162 in Milwaukee. But you can't just bank on this team rolling it back with the same guys, and they're all going to take a step in the right direction, and that's going to allow us to be competitive in the postseason and perhaps pick up a victory in the first series in which you play. You can't do that, and I said that. And based on some of the comments from Brad Meador and some of the comments from Nick Krall, it leaves you scratching your head, and it leaves you a little bit concerned, to be completely honest with you. Also, all the coaches are invited back. Everybody on Francona's staff, who obviously lots of elements of that staff is really just David Bell's staff. I think some changes need to be made, right? Chris Valaika, he's going to stick around as the hitting coach. Is it fair to always just sit there and say, well, the Reds couldn't hit the baseball well, fire the hitting coach? Maybe not, but I would like to see a change there, right? You're just going to run it back with Valaika after how bad and putrid you were offensively. I don't think that's necessarily the right call, but, Cowgill, you want to keep him at first base, Jared House at third. I'm not going to be up in arms about that and throw some big fit about it. Freddie Benavides as the bench coach, I think that's awesome. You need him to stick around. I think the world of Freddie Benavides, and then obviously Brad Mills, Terry's buddy, will be back there as well. So I would have liked to see a change, there. It's like, just rolling it back with Valaika. I don't love it, but, whatever at this point, right? Whatever, we'll see. But there was some, other comments that were a little bit more of an issue for me, and it seemed like they were just kind of banking on all those guys taking the next step, and that was kind of going to be their plan. He said, Brad Meador said, internally, some guys need to step up. We need guys to have good offseason, show back up, ready to go, ready to take that next step. We all know we need to take that next step. Part of that is leadership. Some of the young guys aren't young anymore. That's fair. Need some additions. Can't just roll it back with these same guys. I think most of the pieces are in place for what this team is going to look like, and there's going to be a few pieces that certainly are up for grabs here at this point. Spencer Steer is going to be back, McLean, Elly, Key Bryan, Noelvi, TJ Friedel, Lux, and Stevenson. I think those guys are going to be back. Obviously, Sal Stewart, we'll see what he's able to do with a full season, assuming he's probably going to make the roster, right? He's probably going to break camp with the team, I would assume. We'll see what he's able to do as he got some very valuable experience last year. You got a rotation that's in place: Greene, Lodolo, Abbott, Singer, Burns, and then Rhett Lauder, who's in the Arizona Fall League, the only guy for the Reds that is. There's some arbitration stuff with those guys, but I don't anticipate there being any issues there with that. I think the guys that I just mentioned probably will be back with this team. But there are some free agents, and there are some needs for this Reds team. Emilio Pagan, free agent. Nick Martinez, free agent. Littell, Andujar are the biggest ones that stand out. Austin Hayes has a mutual option, which typically doesn't get picked up by both sides. So we'll see. Terry loved him. Tito loved him. Austin Hayes, I'm not quite sure he's going to be back. Maybe he wants to come back. I don't know. And then the Reds do have options on Scott Barlow and Suter there as well. They talked about Friedel a little bit. Did he regress a little bit in the field? Maybe. His sprint speed went down a little bit, so his range wasn't as good as it was in previous years in center field. He's still a solid player, and they echoed those sentiments in the press conference. Look, understanding it's a small market and understanding the budget that the Reds are going to have to work with, which isn't that much, obviously. I think Friedel, you can roll him back in center field. He can be your leadoff bat. You can win with him. Can you win a world championship with him? I don't know, but can you compete in the postseason with TJ Friedel? I think so, right? And it wasn't like a glaring, he got really slow out in the outfield. I don't think that was necessarily the case with TJ Friedel. So I expect him to figure out what exactly his salary is going to be going forward, and then he'll be back with the Cincinnati Reds here at this point. But from a rotation standpoint, you feel good about the names I mentioned, But there's kind of a sneaky, are you going to have all those guys healthy? Obviously not, right? Especially, with the Lodolo, who can't stay healthy, and Hunter Greene can't stay healthy either. Then you have the questions with Abbott. Can he produce for you at the end of the year? I think as time goes on, he'll continue to get better and better at that. But you probably need to consider bringing in another starting pitcher there as well. That's something that you need to possibly address if you're the Cincinnati Reds. Bullpen, that's gonna look different there as well. The really only locks for the bullpen here at this point, I think, are Santillan and Graham Ashcraft. Thought Tito Francona did a tremendous job with the bullpen. I thought Brad Meador and Nick Krall did a phenomenal job with the bullpen this past year, but they're going to have to tweak that and do some more work and understand, who are some of the guys that are going to be back there in that bullpen and who they're going to add in that bullpen. Because with the Reds, and you could say this about all professional baseball teams, I totally understand that, but for the Reds in particular, when they're not going to be able to get a ton of crazy bats that can deliver a ton of firepower, the bullpen needs to be solid. It was solid this past year. They can't afford to take a step backwards as it relates to the bullpen. We'll see what their plan is in place for that. They asked about Elly and if he could move to the outfield, and Nick Krall basically put the kibosh on that, saying at this point, they're rolling back with him at shortstop. And we'll have this argument, I'm sure, throughout the entirety of the offseason. Chatterbox Reds will certainly continue to discuss it. Everybody says, Elly should play the outfield. I get it, right? He's got a howitzer for an arm. He's got incredible range. You'd think on paper that it would make sense for him to try to go out there. They still have belief in him at shortstop. And Krall and Meador were very, transparent, saying he's got to make the routine plays a little bit more often than he did. And he certainly struggled defensively. And they pointed to the fact that he was a little fatigued, is what Nick Krall said. And they're going to have to manage Elly a little bit different going forward. I mean, basically, you had kind of a revolving door of guys that were checking in at different positions, bouncing around, platooning guys, what have you. Elly De La Cruz was out there every day, right? Basically, he was out there pretty much every day for the Cincinnati Reds. As a young player, I don't think there's an issue with that, but according to Meador and Krall, he was a little bit too fatigued, and maybe that impacted his performance at the end of the year. I don't know. We'll see. I want my best players out there all the time. It's baseball. He's a young guy. This isn't an old guy. He's a kid, and he's got great energy and great, great gas tank, right? And he's in great shape. So I would like to see him more times than not, but it looks like the plan for him is to stay at shortstop, which I'm sure people will have their different opinions on that. And then the DH position is very interesting. Ever since the DH became a thing where the pitcher stopped hitting, the Reds have always kind of rotated guys in and out of that spot. And there's some teams across the league that do that and have success, and there's some teams that roll out the same guy as the DH every single day. Might be who are the Reds to do that. Maybe I would like to see a bit of a philosophy switch at that DH spot. Go out there and get a bat that can perhaps make some noise for you, hit the ball over the fence, and have him be your DH, right? And not just kind of switch out that spot. Gavin Lux is not a DH, right? Here comes DH Gavin Lux. I don't think anybody's shaking at their boots when it comes to that. Gavin Lux was solid for you this year. I'm not banging on Gavin Lux, okay? But I think maybe you need to rethink that position a little bit and try to find a guy that can go out there and put the ball over the fence. And then we'll talk names, obviously, names that could perhaps be available. Anthony Santander was a guy that a lot of people wanted coming into this year. He ends up going to Toronto. Could you perhaps land him? A Tyler O'Neill type of player certainly possesses lots of power. The name Jesse Winker's been floated around. I got no interest in that. That ship has sailed as far as I'm concerned. Appreciate Winker for all he did for the Reds, but I'm ready to move on there at that point. But there are some holes basically that need to be filled on this team. There's obviously a power bat that needs to be obtained, and I think there's some tweaks that you need to make to your pitching as well, and some more depth at that spot. But, having Chase Burns, having Rhett Lauder, that certainly is very, very promising, but you're going to lose some guys in the pen there as well. Zach Littell, he was a great pickup for you at the deadline. Did you want him out there in a do-or-die game against the Dodgers? Could have looked brilliant, right? He had an opportunity to look really brilliant there for a little bit, and then Tito obviously left him in the game a little bit too long there. But I would be surprised if he's back. Same with Martinez. Surprised if he's back with the team. So you've got some new pieces to fill, and I think you need to do that. Again, based on some of their opening comments, it was like, you guys just kind of want to run this thing back because that's not going to be good enough. Maybe you'll be able to sneak into the playoffs again, but you're not going to be a threat to win. You need more offense, and you need more bats. And I'm not the biggest analytic guy, but you need to sit there and look at the numbers and go, okay, this guy can hit the ball over the fence. Let's try to get him in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. We'll see if this front office is capable of doing that. Again, they kind of got their one hand tied behind their back, so to speak, a little bit with the budget in which they're operating with. Meador and Krall said they're kind of laying that out here at this point, and we'll see exactly how much they can spend here this offseason, but need to make a couple of moves and need to get a bat. If somebody, you're playing at a hitter-friendly ballpark, and you got nobody that can hit the ball out of the stadium or out of put it in the seats. Nobody can do that, and unfortunately, I think you thought CES could be that guy for you, and then he couldn't even stay on the big league roster because he just wasn't producing at a high enough level. I still think the Reds as an organization have some belief in him. The power's there, right? Look, if CES could, not strike out as much and, be a little bit better on defense, he could be a guy that, comes in there and hits 30-plus bombs for you, and that could certainly help. But he hasn't been consistent enough, and obviously that's why he wasn't with the big league team, and obviously he wasn't healthy enough either through stretches there as well. But head-scratching comments, some, certainly, and we'll see ultimately the direction that the Reds go here this offseason because obviously need to make some moves.